Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. Dasakam 87, Kuchelopakyanam. Stanza 1. Kuchelanamha bhavatas satirtyatham gatas sasandipani mandire dvijaha tvadekaragena dhanadi nispruho dinhani ninye prashami grihashrami. So this story is about one of Krishna's friends by name Sudama. That's the original name of the person. Kuchela here is actually means somebody who is very badly dressed, who wears very rags and really bad clothes. That's really the meaning of the word Kuchela. So this Sudama is also referred as Kuchela because he was a very poor Brahmin. Dvijaha, the Dvija means somebody who is twice born. So one is the physical birth that happens the first time is when they are actually born, and the second time when they actually do the Upanayanam and then they start learning the Vedas. So that is considered like the second birth or like a spiritual birth. So that's why it's referring to the word Dvijaha here, which is referring to that Brahmin, Kuchela Namna, by name Kuchela. Bhavatas Satirtyatam. So he was also a disciple along with you. Where at Sandipani Mandire. So when you went to the hermitage of the sage Sandipani, for the remember Krishna did the 64 arts in 64 days. So at that time Kuchela was also one of the disciple of sage Sandipani and who studied with Krishna. Kuchela or Sudama in this case, Nisprha Dhanadi. So he was completely desireless in wealth. He did not care about money. And Raghena Tvateka. He was completely devoted to worshipping the god, and that was his primary focus. And he was also a householder, grihashrami. So he had married and he had a family as well. However, he was controlling his mind and his senses, and he was not interested in anything related to anything materialistic, and spent his time or days prashami in a very calm manner without any of the worldly desires. Stanza 2. समानशीलापि तदीयवल्लभा तथैव नोचित्तजयं समेयुषी कदाचिदूचे भतवृत्तिलब्धये रमापतेः किं न सखा निषेव्यते. So in stanza 2, Bhattatripad is talking about his wife, Tadiya Vallabha, his wife. I think I mentioned in the previous Dasakam, I believe. Vallabha is somebody who likes you. So his wife here, Samana Shilapi, even she is of the same nature as Sudama or Kuchela. She's not very interested in materialistic things. She doesn't want, any extra money. And she also was of the same nature as Kuchela. However, here Bhattatripad says, Tatevan, however, in the same manner as Kuchela, Sameyushi Chitta Jayam. Chittam is referring to the mind. And Jayam is control. So control over the mind. So although she was also of the same nature, and she also was not interested in material things, she was not able to sustain that for a really long time, just like how Kuchela was. Reality here is, even she was also very poorly dressed. She was also extremely weak person, weak out of hunger. And she can't be blamed here because Kuchela and she had 27 children. So of course, she had the responsibility of taking care of the house and cooking. And in this case, she's not coming and saying, I need more jewelry or I need other fancy things. She had given up at this point that they are not able to even feed the family. Kadachit, once when such a situation comes, she then goes and approaches Kuchela and says, Kimna nishevyate sakha. You have this friend, right? Why don't you go and approach this friend of yours? Who is Ramapatihi, who is the husband of Sri Lakshmi itself. So he's such a rich person, right? So you should be able to go and approach him, not to go ask for a lot of wealth, but labdaye vritti, just enough. So we can actually at least survive here. We can actually have a livelihood here. Your friend who's the husband of Sri, and he's actually a person who's filled with compassion for the Brahmins, and I'm sure if you went and approached him and asked him for something minimal so that we can actually have a proper shelter and food, I'm sure he will be able to help you out. So this way his wife, Kuchela's wife, then suggests that he goes and meets with Krishna. Stanza 3. Iti ritoyam priyaya kshudartaya जुगुप् समानोऽपि धने मदावहे तदा त्वदालोकन कौतुकाध्ययौ वहन् पटान्ते पृतुकानुपायनम्. So iti ritoyam. So having thus been said by his wife in the previous stanza, Priyaya Kshudartaya, by his wife, who's Kshudartaya, who's actually troubled by hunger, like we said earlier, right? They're all starving. She approaches him. He decides, Kuchela Sudama here, then decides, Kautukat, with a lot of eager, to Tada Alokan Twat, to go and meet you then. So even here, Kuchela is thinking, he's not quite sure if he's actually going to be able to go and ask Krishna for any money. But he wants to use this as an opportunity to actually go and meet with his friend Krishna. So that's why he's actually more eager to actually go meet Krishna rather than to go and ask him for any money for livelihood. And here Bhattadripad also says, Kuchela is thinking, Dhane Madavahe. So with excess wealth, there is going to be a lot of arrogance that's going to come. That's how Kuchela is thinking. So he's thinking, if I had a lot of money, I'm going to become very arrogant. So that's why he has this jugup samanaha. He has this repulsion towards wealth, and he feels that's not important. So when he's going there, when he's getting ready to go there, he then asks his wife if there's anything in the house that he can actually take as a gift to his friend. And if so, please give it to me. But unfortunately, they have nothing available in their house that could be given to Krishna. So Kuchela's wife then actually has to go and beg with other Brahmins who actually live nearby, one of the neighbors, and she gets him 4 fists full of parched rice, avil in this case, and she wraps it in a piece of cloth and gives it to her husband to say, why don't you go give it as a gift. So Bhattadripad doesn't explain this specifically in this. This is explained in Bhagavatam. Bhattadripad just says, Vahan Patante, so he is carrying in the corner of his cloth. Is so little, this is getting filled in the corner of his cloth. Pritukan Upanayam, just a small, beaten rice is what he says, which is avil in this case as an offering. And that's all he's actually carrying to go give it to Krishna here. Stanza 4. Gato yamascharya bhavat purim griheshu shaibhya bhavanam sameyivan pravishya vaikunthamivapanirvritim tavati sambhavanaya tu kim punaha. Sudama is now going, and he lives in Porbandar in Gujarat, and Krishna is living in Dwaraka. So he's approaching Dwaraka, approaching by foot, and he's thinking, how am I ever going to get an audience with Krishna? How am I even able to go meet him? Because in those days, because Dwaraka was more like an island, it was kind of in the sea, and there was a bridge that you need to actually cross to access that. They also had the system where you need to have an identification, some kind of it's a validation of a conch, and a disc has to be the symbol there, and that's how you can actually enter Dwaraka. But however, with the help of a couple of local Brahmins, he's actually passing through 3 gates and guard stations, and he's able to then get in. On reaching that Ascharyamayim Bhavatpurim, reaching this wonderful city of this, which is like spectacular and unimaginable for him coming from Porbandar, he walks around there, and there were so many houses in there. There were 16,000 residences for Krishna's queens. If you remember, 16,008 queens, and everybody had an individual house. So Kuchela doesn't know where he needs to be going. However, when he's walking around there, Krishna sees him from a distance, immediately comes forward, welcomes him, and then he embraces him. And then Krishna then feels very ecstatic on looking at Kuchela, and then there's tears which are actually coming from his eyes out of affection. And Bhattadripad says here is Vaikuntham eva. He feels as if from the looks of it, and as well as from the feeling of attaining peace, apanivritam, he feels peace as if he's entered Vaikuntham. And all of this is because of Ati Sambhavanaya, because of your lavish hospitality, or Krishna. And he just says, what else can I say? Right? It's just this hospitality of this that he already feels that he is in Vaikuntham. And among all these houses, Bhattacharya very specifically says here, Griheshu Sameivan, amongst all these houses that he's seeing there, he enters Shaibhya Bhavana. He enters the house of Mitravinda. If you remember, that was one of the queens who Krishna married. So he enters into the house of Mitravinda, which is where Krishna was that day. And Krishna then welcomes him, seats him, and then this Krishna actually also washes Sudama's feet and then sprinkles the water on his head. Stanza 5. प्रपूजितं तं प्रियया च भीजितं करे गृहीत्वा खतयः पुरा कृतं यदिन्धनार्थं गुरुदारचोदितैः अपर्तु वर्षं तदमर्षिकानने. So prapujitam tam. So Kuchela was very well honored by Krishna, like we started seeing in the earlier ones. And Priyayacha Vijitam, and Krishna's consort in this case is referring to Rukmini. So Rukmini was also there, and goddess Rukmini, who is an incarnation of Sri Lakshmi, was personally of service, and she was carefully fanning Sudama because he was feeling very hot. He was beginning to sweat there out of the nervousness there. The people who were in the palace, who were actually seeing this and seeing Krishna engaging in this kind of activities, were actually amazed about the intense love with which somebody who was unkempt, who's a Kuchela, was actually getting honored. And they were discussing, what pious deeds has this person actually performed? This person is completely unwashed. He seems very poor. He's deprived of all the prosperity in the world. And here you have Krishna, who is a spiritual master of all the three worlds, who is the husband of Sri Lakshmi, and he's leaving everything that he has and he's going and washing this poor man's feet and then embracing him and spending all this time with him. So Krishna then grihitva kare, he's then holding Sudama by his hands, and then akathayaha, he starts narrating all the incidents, purakritam, all the old incidents. And one of the story that Krishna tells, which Bhattacharya also refers to here, is he talks about how when they had actually gone to pick firewood in Apartu Varsham, and it was unseasonal rain that day, and Guru Dhara Choditaihi, because the teacher's wife had requested them to go collect the firewood for the homam and everything the next day. And because of all this rain and wind and water there, we did not know which way to go. And in distress, we were actually wandering through the forest. We were completely lost, and we had only each other for support. And our guru, Sandipani, then only came next morning at sunrise looking for us. So this is how we've actually spent time with each other. So narrating such incidents, Krishna is kind of remembering all the times that he spent with Sudama and how Sudama has always been in his side right from the days when they were at Sandipani Ashramam. Stanza 6. Trapajushoस्मात् पृथुकं बलादथ प्रगृह्य मुष्टौ सकृधाशिते त्वया कृतं नन्वियतेति सम्भ्रमात् रमा किलोपेत्यकरं रुरोदते. Once Kuchela was then fed and Kuchela had enough to eat, then when they're sitting down, so Krishna then goes and tells Kuchela, "Oh Brahman, what have you brought for me from home? You're coming to meet me after so many days. I'm sure you actually got something very special for me." And he says, "You know what? I regard even the smallest of gift which my devotees are offering to me with pure love is more than the greatest of offerings that a non-devotee is actually offering. And that does not please me. I'm not impressed with this. So even if somebody is offering me a leaf or a flower or a fruit or even water with devotion, with true devotion, that is what I actually want." However, Kuchela in this case, Trapajushasmat, he was actually feeling very shy because Kuchela knows he just went through this lavish welcome that Krishna gave, and he just went through all the food and everything that Krishna had offered him, and he knows what he has with him. So he was feeling shy and very embarrassed to actually do anything. And he just sat with his head down. So at this point, Bhalat ata pragruhya, Krishna then is going and forcefully snatching Prutukam, the avil or the flattened rice that Kuchela had. Because being in the heart of all the living beings and being fully cognizant of why Kuchela had actually come there, Krishna knows, he was thinking, Kuchela has worshipped me in the past and he has never asked for wealth, never asked for anything materialistic. And I know he is here today because his devoted wife has now requested him to come and ask for something to survive. So he really deserves something. So Krishna goes and forcefully snatches that thing and Mushtau Sakrit. And only, you remember, Kuchela had 4 fistful of avil. So Krishna is only taking one of that fistful and Ashite Tvaya. And then you, Krishna, start eating this. So as Krishna finishes eating that and he goes for the second round or the second fistful of avil, so nanu iya, this is enough. Indeed, this is enough. Kritam kritam, enough. Double emphasis, right? That iti sambramat Rama. So Rama, which is referring to Lakshmi Devi or Rukmini in this case, is actually coming and stopping Krishna. And Kilopetya, she approached you and Ruroda te karam, and she held back your hand and she stopped you from eating that other fistful of rice, because Lakshmi Devi Rukmini here knows what is the impact of Krishna just consuming that one handful of avil and what would have happened if he had consumed the second handful. So like Rukmini is coming and stopping Krishna and saying that is enough, and stops him right there. Stanza 7. Bhakteshu bhaktena samanitastwaya purim vasanneka nisham mahasukham bata paredhyurdhavinam vinayayau vichitra rupasthava khalvanugraha. After being honored, after eating all this, Tvaya bhakteshu bhaktena, by you, who is the devotee of the devotees, who is devoted to the devotees, referring to Krishna here. So Krishna then compels Kuchela Purimasan to stay in the city for Ekanisham, for one more night. So Kuchela stays there for one night and then in Mahasukam, and then he lives there very happily with all the luxuries which is available there. And he thought that he had actually attained heaven already. So the next day, alas, as he's returning home, he was again honored by Krishna when he was leaving, and who walked with him along the path. And even though he had received no wealth from Krishna, and he was also very embarrassed to ask for anything from Krishna, as he was walking home, he was feeling very happy and joyful about just having had the opportunity to meet with Krishna. And he was thinking, what? It is such a privilege that I, who's just a normal, poor Brahmin, got to meet this Godhead, right? This great person, Krishna, who's actually the husband of, who carries Sri Lakshmi in his chest. And how did I get this? Who am I? I'm just an ordinary person. And this Krishna indeed is a friend of all these Brahmins. He kept me, he hugged me, he embraced me, he seated me in his chairs like as if I was one of his brothers. And his wife, Rukmini, actually was fanning me. And he washed my feet, and I'm really blessed to be able to have had this experience. So next day, Bina Yayo Dravinam, he went away without any wealth. So Bhattaripad wraps this here by saying, Khalu Vichitra Rupaha. Indeed, it's really very strange. The form of Thava Anugraha, your blessing, is indeed very strange, because it's because of your blessing that Kuchela is not even thinking about wealth, and he is just so happy of having met you and then going away with nothing right now. Stanza 8. Yedi hyeya chishyamadasyadachyuto vadami bharyam kimete vrajannaso twadukti lila smitamagnadif punaha kramada pashyan manidhi pramalayam. So Kuchela is also thinking here, Krishna must have thought that if this poor person acquires all the wealth, if I had asked for it, and if Krishna had given me, then he will think, he's going to get so arrogant that he's not going to remember me anymore. So maybe that's the reason Krishna might not have given me all the wealth. So Kuchela is thinking that. So Bhattaripad is saying here, Yedi hya ayachisham. If I had actually asked, Achyutaha adasyat, I'm pretty sure Krishna would have given it to me. There's no way he would have refused and not given it to me. And he didn't give it to me because he felt I don't deserve it. If I deserve it, I'm going to get more arrogant and proud, and maybe it's not the right thing to happen, and that's the reason Krishna didn't give. However, Kim vadami bharyam. What will I now go tell my wife? He had left his house because his wife told him to go get this. And how am I going to answer to her? So thinking thus, he is just walking with his mind magnadihi, with his mind immersed in Twat ulita leela smita, thinking about all the conversations he had with you and your smile. Kuchela is walking. And as he's walking, he then begins to see in front of him a large palace. He gradually saw this Alayam Manidipram. So he sees this big house which is actually filled or studded with gems on the outside as he's entering into his town. Stanza 9. किं मार्गविभ्रंश इति भ्रमन् क्षणं गृहं प्रविष्टः सददर्श वल्लभां सखीपरीतां मणिहेमभूषितां भुबोध च त्वत्करुणां महाद्भुताम्. So he then is wondering, Kim Marga Vibramsha, have I lost my way? Because there's nothing like this when I actually left a few days back. And now I'm seeing this large palace with all gems studded on the outside. Iti Brahman Kshanam. He's wondering like this for a moment. And Griham Pravishtaha. So thinking thus, he's actually entering his house. And there, Sadadarsha Vallabham. He sees his wife there. And he's now seeing that his wife, Manihema Bhushitam. She's now wearing gold ornaments. These are adorned with gems. And Sakhi Paritam. And they're having multiple, surrounded by ladies who are actually supporting his wife, all the maids and all the servants. And he's also beginning to see that his kids have all better clothes right now. And they're all extremely happy. And they all come rushing towards him and tell how all this just changed overnight. And they have no idea how this happened. Chabuboda. He then realizes, Mahadbudam, this unpredictable, unimaginable situation or incident is all happened only because of Tvat Karuna, because of your compassion. So Kuchela is able to kind of put these things together and realize it's because of Krishna and him not even needing to ask and Krishna realizing the need that Kuchela had, and Krishna actually gave all this to him. Stanza 10. सरत्नशालासु वसन्नपि स्वयं समुन्नमद्भक्तिभरो मृतं ययौ त्वमेव मापूरितभक्तवाञ्छितो मरुत्पुराधीश हरस्व मे गधान्. So Ratnashalasu, in this gem-studded building, or palace, which Kuchela is now able to live in, Vasannapi Swayam. So he's now able to spend the rest of his life there with his wife and his family and his kids. However, Samunnamad Bhakti Baraha. So he was making sure that this excess wealth is not giving him that garvam or any arrogance, and his devotion towards you, bhakti towards you, is only increasing more and more, and he continues to be completely devoted to the Lord, and eventually Amritam Yayo, eventually he attains liberation. So Tvam evam apurita. So Krishna, you in this manner, you were able to fulfill bhakta vanchitaha, your devotee's wishes, your Kuchela's wishes, even though he didn't ask, you were able to fulfill all these wishes of him. So O Marutpuradisha, O Lord of Guruvayur, Haraswa Megadan, please rid me or get rid of all the diseases and the ailments I'm actually having. With this, Bhattatripad ends Dasakam 87. Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha.